Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we'll be doing a overview of King of Fighters 2001, which is the end of the Nest saga. I do apologize for this late upload, or slow upload I should say. This should have been actually up last week. I also will be uploading 2002 and also 2003 this weekend, as we're now just a little over, I think 28 or 27 days till King of Fighters 15 comes out. This game, as you can see, was also published by Eoloth, a Korean company who took on basically the reins after SNK went into bankruptcy thanks to Azure. This game, as I mentioned earlier, is the last in the Nest Saga series. It was released on November 15th in 2001 in the arcades in Japan, and also in 2001 in America. Still, of course, a one-on-one as far as player fighting game, but one of the things they did lean into with the striker system is you can actually now select up to 3 strikers or have no strikers and have all 4 of your characters or your team fighting on the actual field itself. As I mentioned, it was released on the arcade MVS system, the Neo Geo AES, Dreamcast, PlayStation 2. Of course, it is available on the PlayStation Network, even on Microsoft Windows, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, and of course the Neo Geo Mini. Aolith, of course, did develop and program this game in 2000 as SNK had gone bankrupt. And Aolith did take some interest in creating some of the King of Fighter games since it was pretty popular in Korea. Brezasoft was also one of the devs that did help Aolith helping in the game. They also released one of the other King of Fighters games on the NeoWave, Atomus Wave hardware as well. As I mentioned, Eolith created it, and so they actually added a new character, Mei Li. Beyond that, they did add, or I would say, kind of redevelop the tactical order select system, which is basically kind of a deeper kind of expansion of the striker system that was given in 99 and 2000. After selecting or choosing for your team of 4 characters, you can of course select and kind of split them up. So you can actually have either all 4 characters on the field or up to 1 character on the field and 3 strikers. The number of assigned strikers basically does in fact implement or affect your kind of gameplay and the strategy as you go through the game. Um, Sometimes, especially with some of the mid bosses or sub bosses, it was a little easier not to have any striker and at least have 4 chances to knock that sub boss out, especially with the SNK boss AI. Now, having the number of fighters on your team would also directly affect proportionally the number of stock systems you can have in regards to your maximum. So, for example, if you had all 4 fighters on the field, that means you could only stock 1 gauge. And of course, with each one that you put away from the field and into the striker system, you gain an extra gauge. You can of course use a striker just like you can in the 99 and 2000 by just pressing the BC buttons. Still, of course, at the cost of 1 stock. And one of the other systems that they kind of hidden in there, and I'll be honest, I was totally not aware of this system until I had to do some research and looked it up. But I guess some characters actually have some moves that have a wire whip effect. One is called a critical wire, and the other is called a counter wire, where upon hitting your opponent, they can either bounce them off the wall or will basically have other rebound effects. And these are primarily wall kind of rebound based, at least from what I could see in my research. And part of the new characters they added to the game is Meili Jinhu, who is now a new member of the Korea Justice Team and actually one of Kim Kapwan's students. And she replaces Jun Hoon. Foxy is also a member of Nest and is also now part of this game. K Quadruple 9 is an agent of Nest as well and is a clone of Kyo Kusanagi who looks a lot like Akira. And of course, he is being brought back into King of Fighters 15. Angel is another agent of the Nest program and also is assigned to keep an eye on K999, who is basically now part of all of the same team. Zero, of course, is one of the sub bosses, with Ignatz being the final boss. The new protagonist for 2001 is the hero team, known as the K team, so which consists of K, Maxima, Whip, and Lin. Then you've got the Kyo team or Japan team with Kyo Kusanagi, Benimaru Nikaido, Goro Diamond, and Shingo Yabuki. The Yagami team consists of Yori Yagami, Vanessa, Seth, and Ramon. Fatal Fury team is still pretty much the same, except now we have Blue Mary, along with Terry and Andy Bogard and Joe Higashi. The Art of Fighting team still has Ryo Sakazaki, Robert Garcia, Yuri Sakazaki, and Takuma Sakazaki. The Ikari Warriors team now has Leona Hydern, Ralph Jones, Clark Still, and Hydern as a character. The Psychic Soldier team has Athena Asamiya, Sei Kensu, Chin Gensai, and Bao. The women's fighting team is King, Mai Shiranui, Hinako Shiju, and Ling Zafei. I probably slaughtered that. Ling Li Zhangfei. With the Korea Justice team, you've got Kim Kapan, Chang Kohan, and Choi Bunji, and along with the new character Mei Jinhu. The Nest team has Kula Diamond, new character Foxy, K quadruple 9 or K, and Angel. For the stages in 2001, you've got Brazil, where it takes place in the first curve of the Circuit of Interlagos, based in the city of Sao Paulo. In China, it takes place in the Hanging Temple in the city of Datong. In Italy, it's on the Rialto Bridge near the Grand Canal of Venice. In Japan, it takes place in a folk style Matsuri. In Korea, the Bakugsa Temple in the city of Gyeongju. In Mexico, it's right by the Franz Mayer Museum and the Santa Veracruz Church in Mexico City. In USA, it takes place in Nevada, Las Vegas. The sub-boss and boss stages are the Cloister of Judgment at Ness Spaceship, and also in the Fortress. And as far as other ports for this game, did come out for the Dreamcast along with PlayStation 2. The Dreamcast version in Japan did have a puzzle game, which was not present in the PlayStation 2 version. There were some redrawn character artwork for the portraits on the PS2, and also some 3D effects added as well. The King of Fighters 2001 was also released in a NES pack, which did include both the original arcade and the Dreamcast version, which also did have the puzzle mode later on the PS2, along with a brand new arranged soundtrack. Then getting into the game itself, I am glad that Eolith did at least try to continue the King of Fighters series. While the NES Saga isn't one of my favorites, it is definitely clear to see that both Eolith and Breza were definitely fans of the series. And as I mentioned, I'm glad that they at least gave their try and tried to keep it alive, especially when SNK went bankrupt. That said, the tone of the game, along with 99, 2000, and 2001, as far as the background and the overall themes, I wasn't honestly a huge fan. I definitely preferred more of the 95, 96, 97 as far as the theme and the backgrounds there. Storyline wise, I was definitely more a fan of the Orochi saga. I did like that the NES saga did introduce some new characters, which is also very fun to play once you were brought into the King of Fighters 2002, basically a dream match. 2001 itself, as far as the graphics, they're actually pretty well done. The characters themselves, I have no complaints against. The sprites are still very well animated. The background stages are fairly lively, but again, just not a fan of some of the stages. I would say 2001 is definitely more of a step up from 2000 and then the darker 1999 version. As far as sound effects, still good. Voices, still great. That synthesizer working overtime on the Neo Geo board still works well. The arranged soundtrack on the PlayStation 2 version is pretty decent. Definitely in the nice rework. You can definitely check it out and hear it online if you don't have the PS2 version. The control and gameplay, honestly, the control is pretty tight. Fortunately, having played 99 and 2000, I had gotten used to Robert's style of gameplay in this game, which is funny because in 2002 it changed again once SNK Playmore came back from bankruptcy. So in this game, Robart is more of a charge character, which is a bit of a pain to use. So I'm glad he's back to normal in 2002 and in 2003 onwards. You can One of the best things still about the King of Fighters game is that with so many characters, it's definitely not hard to find the character that you really like or can really kind of mesh with. I usually vacillate between either the Fatal Fury team or the Art of Fighting team as a main when I'm playing the computer. But when I am playing with friends or actual live opponents that aren't, god tier, I definitely one of my friends, Andy, who is just a beast when it comes to fighting games. Um, I've yet to find a good character to beat him with. He's amazing with these fighting games. And that's generally when I do play live opponents or we're in the same room. I like to experiment a little bit with the characters, try different play styles, especially as you are fighting other people. Everybody has their own counter to a certain type of play style, and that's one of the things I do love about King of Fighters. There are different enough characters, not just from your particular shotos, your grapplers, etc. You have your zoners, and there's quite a nice variety. And visually, it's nice to be able to have that choice. I'm still hoping for a Filipino fighting team sometime in this, maybe in the future, since we do have a Filipina who's actually in the Soul Calibur series. So who knows? Maybe they'll include one in King of Fighters in the future. And as I've talked about ad nauseum in previous overviews, you could still definitely pick up this game physically. Of course, on the AES, MVS, the NES Saga isn't quite as popular, so you're able to find these at a much better price, especially on the MVS. AES, it's still pretty expensive. It's definitely have risen in the last couple years, not quite as cheap as it used to be. Unfortunately, prices have risen. You can see this game as cheap as $300 to as high as $1,000, just because, unfortunately, sellers are trying to maximize on the retro gaming phase as far as the collecting. Being stuck at home with this pandemic, a lot of folks are, of course, increasing their collections physically, and unfortunately, that brings up the prices. Still, the Japanese version, when I picked this up originally for the home AES, I actually only picked up for $160 before shipping. Now, as I mentioned, you're looking at anywhere between 300 plus, and actually 2001 I hadn't picked up until 2018 or 2019. So, and at that time, it was fairly cheap. So it's really kind of doubled as far as what in the last couple of years. The Japanese versions are still the physical versions I like to collect, as they're more bang for your buck, and oftentimes the cartridge, the shock box, and the manuals are still in great shape. Otherwise, to actually even play the game, fortunately, you're not lacking of places to play King of Fighters 2001 or really any of the SNK games that are fairly mainstream. Of course, there are games like Nightmare in the Dark, which honestly you can't find a physical copy for on the MV except for the MVS, and there's no digital copy. So hopefully that'll be re-released again soon, or games like Double Dragon would be re-released. Fortunately, with today's digital age, you can pick up this game pretty much almost anywhere, really. You can pick it up on PC, on Windows, pick it up on the Nintendo Switch eShop, the PSN store, Xbox store. I personally still picked it up on the Switch, as you can play it basically anywhere. It's a great conversion. Unfortunately, there's no online play. Hopefully, there will be a version of, or maybe if II Arcade talks to SNK and gets more of their kind of main fighting game series, I would love to be able to play this online and actually licensed and everything else. All right, and then just to really kind of wrap things up and end it off with a summary. Graphics, I think solid 8. Sound, solid 9. Control, gameplay, still a solid 10 for me. The game itself is a great way to have ended the NES saga. I do prefer it versus 99 or 2000. Still not as favorite. I do prefer the Orochi saga as I had originally mentioned. But still, great way to add, and I am very glad that Eolith and Breza did keep King of Fighters alive for SNK to come back and continue the series. So I do want to thank them and the developers at Eolith and Brezza for keeping KOF. This is it for today's overview. Next up, we'll have King of Fighters 2002, and then, of course, after that, 2003 for this weekend on the road to King of Fighters 15 in a little over, I believe, 27 or 28 days from now. So, everyone, please like, subscribe, and comment. See you soon.